President Vladimir Putin of Russia on Thursday early morning night ordered the use of Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles (ICBM) in the Dnipro region of Ukraine, which caused injuries and destruction of buildings. But Putin, in a video broadcast on Friday, said the weapon used in Dnipro was Intermediate Range Ballistic Missile (IRBM). The missile targeted industrial and critical infrastructure, causing fires and injuring 2 people. Local reporters stated that the missile was launched from Russia's Astrakhan region, accompanied by a Kinzhal hypersonic missile and 7 Kh-101 cruise missiles. Ukrainian defenses intercepted 6 of the cruise missiles but did not confirm the ICBM or IRBM impact. The attack followed Ukraine's use of US and British missiles on Russian territory, worsening the conflict. Moscow warned that these attacks could cause serious consequences. Military observers said although Ukraine's Patriot systems can intercept short-range missiles, they are not optimized for ICBMs. Analysts question whether the US was pre-notified of the launch to avoid accidental retaliation. Ukraine fired UK-supplied long-range Storm Shadow missiles at targets within Russia for the first time, according to BBC. Earlier, Ukraine had said that Russia is staging a psychological attack in spreading messages of a large attack after the US closes its embassy in Kyiv over an airstrike threat. Russian President Vladimir Putin, in a nationwide address, stated that Western long-range missiles were used in strikes on military facilities in Russia's Bryansk and Kursk regions, marking a shift in the Ukraine conflict to a global war. He warned that these attacks require the direct involvement of operators from the manufacturing countries. Putin, during the nationwide broadcast, announced the successful test of the new Intermediate Range Ballistic Missile (IRBM) Orishnik, equipped with a known nuclear hypersonic warhead, and confirmed its use in a strike on Uzmash. He emphasized that the West should reconsider plans to enable strikes deep inside Russia, warning of decisive Russian retaliation in case of escalation. Although Putin claimed the enemy's objectives were not achieved, he pledged to issue prior warnings to Ukrainian civilians in areas targeted by such missiles. He also criticized the US for violating the agreement to eliminate long-range missiles, transferring its weapons to different regions of the world. In a swift reaction, President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday said, "Today, Putin admitted to taking a second step this year toward escalating and expanding this war. A new ballistic missile was used. Putin struck our city of Dnipro, one of Ukraine's largest cities. This is a clear and severe escalation in the scale and brutality of this war, a cynical violation of the UN Charter by Russia. Let me emphasize, this is already Russia's second step toward escalation this year. The first was involving North Korea in the war against Ukraine with a contingent of at least 11,000 soldiers. Putin has taken both of these steps while ignoring everyone in the world who is calling for no further expansion of the war. He disregards calls from China, Brazil, European countries, the United States, and others. Putin alone started this war, an entirely unprovoked war, and he is doing everything to prolong it, now for over 1,000 days. The use of a ballistic missile against Ukraine today is yet more proof that Russia has no interest in peace. Putin lies when he claims that Ukraine's use of long-range weapons is somehow a new step for us. This is not the first time we have used such weapons, and we have every right to do so under international law. Our right to self-defense is the same as that of any other nation. And when Russian missiles hit our cities, when Iranian Shaheds attack Ukraine every night, when a North Korean contingent is deployed on our borders, Putin is not only prolonging the war, he is spitting in the face of those in the world who genuinely want peace to be restored. The world must respond, right now. There is no strong reaction from the world. Putin is very sensitive to this. He is testing you, their partners. It is clear who the sole culprit of this war is. who started it on February 24th and who continues to pour all resources into its continuation. He must be stopped. A lack of tough reactions to Russia's actions sends a message that such behavior is acceptable. This is what Putin is doing. Putin must feel the cost of his deranged ambitions. Response is needed. Pressure is needed. Russia must be forced into real peace, which can only be achieved through strength. Otherwise, there will be endless Russian strikes, threats, and destabilization, not just against Ukraine. True peace is worth fighting for. Action is required. Thank you to everyone who is helping. Glory to Ukraine, Zelensky words and in quote. We had on Tuesday reported that there seems to be possible escalation of the more than 1,000-day-old Russia-Ukraine war as Ukraine fired United States of America, USA-made Army tactical missile systems, ATACMS, into a major ammunition depot in Karachev area of Bryansk Oblast region of Russia on Tuesday after President Joe Biden gave Kyiv approval to use its long-range missiles inside Russia, an action which prompted President Vladimir Putin to hold emergency nuclear weapon meeting with his team and also signed into law the use of the nuclear weapon against country assisting non-nuclear nation against Moscow, a statement which apparently indicated that Russia may have planned to attack US. Reports from Ukraine indicated that Russia intensified airstrikes against Ukraine during the weekend. Videos posted online on Tuesday showed large explosions at a major ammunition depot, Grau Arsenal in Karachev in the Bryansk Oblast of Russia, located about 115 kilometers from Ukraine. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told journalists that new changes to Russia's nuclear weapons doctrine signed by President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday mean the use of Western non-nuclear rockets by the armed forces of Ukraine against Russia can prompt a nuclear response. According to reports, the ATACMS strikes by Ukraine affected the facility near Karachev, 70 miles from Ukraine's border, with secondary explosions reported. Footage showed a fiery explosion followed by plumes of smoke. Ukrainian military sources confirmed the success of the operation, marking a turning point in the conflict as US-made missiles are now part of Kyiv's arsenal. Russia claimed its air defenses intercepted 5 missiles, but debris from one caused a fire at a military site. In response, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a new law allowing nuclear retaliation for long-range missile attacks, lowering the threshold for deploying nuclear weapons. Putin also issued a direct warning to the US, accusing the Biden administration of recklessness after its recent approval for Ukraine to use ATACMS. Russian lawmakers condemned Washington's decision, with one senior official calling it a significant step toward World War III. This escalation comes on the 1,000th day of the war, underscoring the growing global tensions. The Russian Defense Ministry said that it defeated a Ukrainian attack that used US-made missiles shortly before the Kremlin updated its nuclear weapons doctrine to allow for nuclear strikes in response to foreign ballistic missile attacks. The changes to Russia's nuclear doctrine were unveiled several weeks ago but only signed by Putin on Tuesday, as officials in Moscow expressed anger at the US decision to allow ATACMS use on Russian territory. The doctrine now says Russia can launch a nuclear attack against a country assisting a non-nuclear country in aggression against Russia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Tuesday, the fact that ATACMS was used repeatedly in the Bryansk region tonight is, of course, a signal that they want escalation. And it is impossible to use these high-tech missiles without the Americans, as Putin had. Nigeria apex lawmaking body, the Senate under the leadership of Godswill Akpabio has approved the sum of $2.2 billion fresh loan application by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, few days after the president said the former Nigeria president from 1999 to 2007, Olusegun Obasanjo, was not wise to have paid off Nigeria $15 billion debts he inherited. A statement the president made in reaction to Obasanjo's speech at the leadership forum held in honor and memory of one of the country's great literary icons, late Chinua Achebe at Yale University, United States of America, USA, and the new loan, if accessed, has made Nigeria's debt profile to rise above 136 trillion naira, just as the country is currently and apparently borrowing money to finance recurrent expenditures, especially borrowing funds to pay back previous loans. Sahara Reporters News Network, in a report few hours ago, stated that the Nigerian Senate has finally approved a fresh $2.2 billion, about 1.77 trillion naira, request made by President Bola Tinubu. The legislative approval was given by the Senate after the submission of a report by Aliyu Wamaku, chairman of the Committee on Local and Foreign Debt. The sum, equivalent to 1.7 trillion naira using the exchange rate of 800 naira to a dollar, will be used to finance the 9.1 trillion naira deficit in the 2024 budget. Earlier, Nigerian media space was awash with criticisms from former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, who strongly criticized President Bola Tinubu's leadership, stating that Nigeria is becoming a failing state due to widespread corruption, poor leadership, and immorality. Obasanjo made the remarks during his keynote address at the Chinua Achebe Leadership Forum held at Yale University. Obasanjo emphasized that the country's situation is dire, with corruption, insecurity, conflict, and disunity on the rise. He attributed Nigeria's problems to the reign of Baba Go Slow, President Muhammadu Buhari, and Emilokon, President Bola Tinubu, citing the consequences of pervasive corruption, mediocrity, immorality, misconduct, mismanagement, and injustice. The former president urged the leadership to prioritize the betterment of the people, rather than succumbing to foreign influences. He warned against state capture by vested interests, which he described as one of the most pervasive forms of corruption. Obasanjo noted that public institutions are being manipulated for personal gains, undermining the country's progress. Obasanjo expressed concern about rising insecurity and food scarcity, emphasizing that addressing these issues is crucial to preventing instability. He accused politicians of exploiting vulnerable citizens instead of providing concrete solutions to their problems. In response to Obasanjo's criticism, the presidency countered with allegations of hypocrisy, citing Obasanjo's own leadership shortcomings during his tenure. Tinubu, speaking through the office of the Special Advisor to the President, Bayo Onanuga, stated that Obasanjo's administration was marred by corruption, including the Halliburton bribe scandal and the failed $16 billion power project. Olusegun Obasanjo also called for the dismissal of the chairman of INEC, Mahmood Yakubu, and officials of the commission at all levels as part of a reform of the electoral process in Nigeria. He delivered the address, titled Leadership Failure and State Capture in Nigeria, in a pre-recorded speech played at the event. Obasanjo described the 2023 general election as a travesty, adding that the reform of the electoral system is a key agenda for the country. The former president also called for shorter tenures for INEC officials and a more rigorous vetting process to prevent the appointment of partisan individuals. As a matter of urgency, we must ensure the INEC chairperson and their staff are thoroughly vetted. The vetting exercise should produce dispassionate, non-partisan actors with impeccable reputations. Nigeria must ensure the appointment of new credible INEC leadership at the federal, state, local government, and municipal, city, town, and village levels, with short tenures to prevent undesirable political influence and corruption, and to re-establish trust in the electoral system by its citizens, he said. He argued that the INEC chairperson must not only be absolutely above board but must also be transparently independent and incorruptible. Obasanjo said the commission willfully failed to utilize two main technological tools at its disposal, the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, and the INEC election result viewing portal, IREV, during the 2023 presidential election, despite the promises made by Yakubu. The BVAS and IREV are two technological innovations that, prior to 2023, were celebrated for their potential to enhance the accuracy and transparency of our election results, eliminate the threat of election rigging, and boost public trust in electoral outcomes. These technologies were touted by the INEC chairman himself. In the end, these technologies did not fail. INEC willfully failed to use or implement them, which resulted in widespread voting irregularities. It was a case of inviting the fox into the henhouse, he said. Details of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's response to Obasanjo criticism titled, "Former President Obasanjo was not an ideal leader to emulate," reads verbatim below. In a recent display of his characteristic self-importance, former President Olusegun Obasanjo once again took to the public stage to bestow his unsolicited wisdom on leaders and governance in Nigeria. From his lofty perch, he blamed those who served after his tenure for the nation's myriad challenges. Unfortunately, the former leader's habit of casting aspersions on every subsequent administration has devolved into a recurring pastime, overshadowing the expectation of an elder statesman to join a constructive dialogue on attaining national progress. In his latest critique of the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, whom he pejoratively called Baba Go Slow, and President Bola Tinubu, who he tagged Emilokon, Chief Obasanjo used the platform provided by Chinua Achebe Leadership Forum at Yale University to unfurl his latest treatise on leadership and public morality. He also used the forum to write of Nigeria as a failing country. The irony of Chief Obasanjo using the platform that celebrates Achebe to sermonize on the ideals of good governance, statecraft, economic management, and corruption should be apparent to discerning minds. When he was alive, Chinua Achebe was a universally acclaimed moral, cultural and literary icon with scant regard for Obasanjo. It is on record that Professor Achebe rejected the third highest national honor bestowed on him by the Obasanjo-led administration in 2004 on the grounds of the prevalence of abuse of power, corruption, poor leadership, and, in particular, state-sponsored brigandage endorsed by Chief Obasanjo in Achebe's home state of Anambra. In Anambra, the former president actively supported the abduction of a sitting governor, Dr. Chris Ngige, by non-state actors led by Chris Uba, a younger brother of Obasanjo's senior aide. In rejecting the 2004 national honor by the Obasanjo administration, Achebe declared, "Nigeria's condition today under your watch is too dangerous for silence. I must register my disappointment and protest by declining to accept the high honor awarded me in the 2004 honors list." Brazen illegality and assault on the Constitution of Nigeria reached a disturbing height under the leadership of Chief Obasanjo. During Obasanjo's era, the unconstitutional impeachment of 4 governors who belonged to his party occurred. The governors impeached by minority members of the Houses of Assembly were Joshua Dariye of Plateau, Rashidi Ladoja of Oyo, Ayodele Fayose of Ekiti, and Depriye Alamesia of Bayelsa. A man under whose watch all of these egregious infractions occurred should certainly not be the one to give any lecture on leadership and corruption. He should not be taken seriously as he reeks of profound hypocrisy of the worst form. Former President Obasanjo has continuously pumped himself up as the economic wizard of Nigeria. But a reality check showed he was nothing of such. He left unresolved many, if not all, of the problems of Nigeria, which he itemized in his lecture. He even recently admitted that his government made a mistake by not focusing on gas development, as the Tinubu administration does today. All oil and gas players know that Nigeria has more gas than oil. The only positive of the Obasanjo era was fiscal and monetary policy management buoyed by a consistent rise in crude oil prices throughout his 8-year tenure. This rise in crude oil prices started in 2000 and peaked in 2013 when it reached over $100 per barrel before a decline in 2014, which set the oil-dependent economy downward. The current economic crisis the All Progressives Congress administrations have been battling since 2015 is the product of the poor choices in economic management made by Obasanjo and the two successors from his party. Obasanjo prides his government on paying the $15 billion debt owed to the Paris Club. Still, it was not a wise decision as it was done when the country's critical economic infrastructure across sectors was in shambles. While oil receipts brought money into the country, Obasanjo failed to fix the deplorable federal roads or expand the national road network. He did not repair the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the Lagos-Abeokuta road leading to his hometown in Abeokuta, the Ota-Idiroko road, and many others. His administration also should have paid more serious attention to universities and polytechnics. In a joint vote of no confidence in our tertiary institutions, Obasanjo and his deputy, Atiku Abubakar, sought to profit from their weaknesses by establishing their private universities. As a sitting president, Chief Obasanjo abused his office to advance personal interest against the spirit and letters of our constitution when he corralled leading businessmen, women and government contractors to donate billions of naira for his Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library and Resorts in Abeokuta and his Yale University in Ota. After wasting billions of naira on a failed third-term project in 2007, Chief Obasanjo hurriedly organized a sham electoral process that would go down in history as the most fraudulent election held in Nigeria since 1960. The beneficiary of the sham election, Umaru Yar'Adua, admitted that the election was seriously flawed and, as Justice Mohammed Oweisi's panel recommended, worked towards electoral reforms. It is hypocrisy writ large when a man who presided over the worst election in Nigeria demands the sack of the leadership of the Independent National Electoral Commission. For 8 years, the Obasanjo administration made no significant investment in security by modernizing the armed forces. He did not redesign the national security architecture or change the military doctrine. The most critical investment in our armed forces, especially the military, since the administration of President Shehu Shagari in 1980 was made by the APC-led administration of President Buhari from 2015-2023. When President Buhari assumed office in 2015, the Air Force had fewer than 3 serviceable fighter jets, and the Navy barely had 1 serviceable vessel. Within 8 years, President Buhari acquired over 40 new fighter jets of different capabilities, including 12 Tucano jets. He also acquired naval ships to strengthen the Navy. The APC administration of Buhari developed the air wings of the Army and Navy and changed the entire armed forces into one of the most potent fighting forces in the world. President Tinubu has continued to sustain the same support and funding to the military and other security agencies. It is the reason the country is winning in the multi-pronged fight against Boko Haram terrorists, bandits, kidnappers, and other perpetrators of violent crimes. In the last year, over 400 terror and bandit kingpins have been eliminated, and thousands of Nigerians have been freed from their abductors. The insecurity that engulfed Nigeria started under the Obasanjo administration with militancy and kidnapping of expatriate oil workers in the Niger Delta, which later became a festering wound from which the nation has not recovered. Boko Haram, which became a violent movement in 2009, began its build-up under Obasanjo's regime. On matters of integrity, honesty, and morality in public leadership, Chief Obasanjo is certainly not a paragon of virtue for anyone to model after. Nigerians can still remember the messy public spark between Chief Obasanjo and his then Vice President, Atiku Abubakar, over PTDF money that led to a Senate public hearing in 2004. The sordid details of the public hearing included unsettling evidence of how Obasanjo instructed his vice president to buy sport utility vehicles for his mistresses with PTDF funds. There was also the Halliburton bribe scandal, which the U.S. Congress probe revealed. Bribe payments were made to the highest political authorities at the villa while Obasanjo was in charge. Nigerians will also remember how the Obasanjo administration invested $16 billion on electricity, which left the country in utter darkness. The colossal amount spent on power was so embarrassing that President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, Obasanjo's successor, ordered a probe. Similarly, Obasanjo's privatization program was scandalous. It did not deliver real value for the country. His administration cheaply sold national assets to cronies who stripped the assets of the state-owned enterprises. A case in point was the aluminium smelter company Alscon in Ikot Abasi, Akwa Ibom State, built by the military government at the princely sum of $3.2 billion. It was sold for $130 million. Obasanjo also sank money into turnaround maintenance of our refineries, which never worked, leading to the massive importation of refined petroleum products. Such was the miasma of corruption under Obasanjo that the former governor of Abia, Orji Uzor Kalu, his party member, petitioned the EFCC, accusing Obasanjo of gross abuse of office. If Chief Obasanjo had addressed the many problems he critiqued in his poorly written Yale lecture when he ruled Nigeria for 8 years, President Buhari and President Tinubu would have had a much lighter burden of fixing the country. While the Tinubu administration diligently works to overcome the country's economic challenges, it would be better and more advisable for former President Obasanjo to temper his self-righteousness in his public discussions regarding our nation's temporary difficulties. Instead, his remaining years would be better spent reflecting on the missed opportunities during his own International Criminal Court. ICC has ordered the arrest of Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the country's former Secretary of Defense, Yoav Gallant, alongside Hamas military leader Diab Ibrahim al-Masri, also known as Mohammed Deif, whose current living status is unknown. ICC, in a press statement which the full details is published verbatim below, said, the court initially issued the arrest warrant and classified it secret in the interest of witnesses of the crime, but decided to make it public in the general interest of the victims of the war crime and the families of the victims of the war against humanity. Al-Masri, also known as Mohammed Deif, was the mastermind behind the 7th of October attacks, according to security operatives. It is unclear if he is still alive, following an airstrike that Israel claimed killed him earlier this year. The court originally said it was seeking arrest warrants for the 3 men in May for the alleged crimes, and today announced that it had rejected challenges by Israel and issued warrants of arrest. ICC said it found reasonable grounds to believe that Netanyahu and Gallant bear criminal responsibility for alleged crimes. These, the court said, include the war crime of starvation as a method of warfare, and the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. The statement said the court pre-trial chamber had rejected Israel's challenges to the court's jurisdiction and issued warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. It will now be up to the ICC's 124 member states, who do not include Israel or its ally, the United States, to decide whether or not to enforce the warrants, according to BBC. In May, the ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, sought warrants for Netanyahu, Gallant, Deif, and 2 other Hamas leaders who have since been killed, Ismail Haniyeh and Yahya Sinwar. Although Israel believes Deif has also been killed, the chamber said it was not able to confirm his death. ICC stated that the alleged crime stems from the events of the 7th of October 2023, when Hamas gunmen attacked southern Israel, killing about 1,200 people and taking 251 others back to Gaza as hostages, while specifically mentioning the alleged war crime committed by Israel to have begun on October 8, 2023 to May 20, 2024, when the prosecutor filed the warrant of arrest case against the State of Israel. Verbatim of the ICC statement reads in quote below, today, on the 21st of November 2024, Pre-trial Chamber I of the International Criminal Court, in its composition for the situation in the State of Palestine, unanimously issued 2 decisions rejecting challenges by the State of Israel, brought under Articles 18 and 19 of the Rome Statute, the statute. It also issued warrants of arrest for Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu and Mr. Yoav Gallant. Decisions on requests by the State of Israel. The chamber ruled on 2 requests submitted by the Israel on the 26th of September 2024. In the first request, Israel challenged the court's jurisdiction over the situation in the state of Palestine in general, and over Israeli nationals more specifically, on the basis of Article 19(2) of the statute. In the second request, Israel requested that the chamber order the prosecution to provide a new notification of the initiation of an investigation to its authorities under Article 18(1) of the statute. Israel also requested the chamber to halt any proceedings before the court in the relevant situation, including the consideration of the applications for warrants of arrest for Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu and Mr. Yoav Gallant, submitted by the prosecution on the 20th of May 2024. As to the first challenge, the chamber noted that the acceptance by Israel of the court's jurisdiction is not required, as the court can exercise its jurisdiction on the basis of territorial jurisdiction of Palestine, as determined by pre-trial chamber I in a previous composition. Furthermore, the chamber considered that pursuant to Article 19(1) of the statute, states are not entitled to challenge the court's jurisdiction under Article 19(2) prior to the issuance of a warrant of arrest. Thus, Israel's challenge is premature. This is without prejudice to any future possible challenges to the court's jurisdiction and/or admissibility of any particular case. Decision on Israel's challenge to the jurisdiction of the court pursuant to Article 19(2) of the Rome Statute. The chamber also rejected Israel's request under Article 18(1) of the statute. The chamber recalled that the prosecution notified Israel of the initiation of an investigation in 2021. At that time, despite a clarification request by the prosecution, Israel elected not to pursue any request for deferral of the investigation. Further, the chamber considered that the parameters of the investigation in the situation have remained the same and, as a consequence, no new notification to the State of Israel was required. In light of this, the judges found that there was no reason to halt the consideration of the applications for warrants of arrest. Decision on Israel's request for an order to the prosecution to give an Article 18(1) notice. Warrants of arrest. The chamber issued warrants of arrest for 2 individuals, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu and Mr. Yoav Gallant, for crimes against humanity and war crimes committed from at least the 8th of October 2023 until at least the 20th of May 2024, the day the prosecution filed the applications for warrants of arrest. The arrest warrants are classified as secret, in order to protect witnesses and to safeguard the conduct of the investigations. However, the chamber decided to release the information below since conduct similar to that addressed in the warrant of arrest appears to be ongoing. Moreover, the chamber considers it to be in the interest of victims and their families that they are made aware of the warrant's existence. At the outset, the chamber considered that the alleged conduct of Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant falls within the jurisdiction of the court. The chamber recalled that, in a previous composition, it already decided that the court's jurisdiction in the situation extended to Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Furthermore, the chamber declined to use its discretionary proprio motu powers to determine the admissibility of the 2 cases at this stage. This is without prejudice to any determination as to the jurisdiction and admissibility of the cases at a later stage. With regard to the crimes, the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu, born on the 21st of October 1949, Prime Minister of Israel at the time of the relevant conduct, and Mr. Gallant, born on the 8th of November 1958, Minister of Defense of Israel at the time of the alleged conduct, each bear criminal responsibility for the following crimes as co-perpetrators for committing the acts jointly with others: the war crime of starvation as a method of warfare, and the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhuman acts. The chamber also found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant each bear criminal responsibility as civilian superiors for the war crime of intentionally directing an attack against the civilian population. Alleged crimes. The chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that during the relevant time, international humanitarian law related to international armed conflict between Israel and Palestine applied. This is because they are two high contracting parties to the 1949 Geneva Conventions and because Israel occupies at least parts of Palestine. The chamber also found that the law related to non-international armed conflict applied to the fighting between Israel and Hamas. The chamber found that the alleged conduct of Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant concerned the activities of Israeli government bodies and the armed forces against the civilian population in Palestine, more specifically civilians in Gaza. It therefore concerned the relationship between two parties to an international armed conflict, as well as the relationship between an occupying power and the population in occupied territory. For these reasons, with regards to war crimes, the chamber found it appropriate to issue the arrest warrants pursuant to the law of international armed conflict. The chamber also found that the alleged crimes against humanity were part of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Gaza. The chamber considered that there are reasonable grounds to believe that both individuals intentionally and knowingly deprived the civilian population in Gaza of objects indispensable to their survival, including food, water, and medicine and medical supplies, as well as fuel and electricity, from at least the 8th of October 2023 to the 20th of May 2024. This finding is based on the role of Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant in impeding humanitarian aid in violation of international humanitarian law and their failure to facilitate relief by all means at its disposal. The chamber found that their conduct led to the disruption of the ability of humanitarian organizations to provide food and other essential goods to the population in need in Gaza. The aforementioned restrictions, together with cutting of electricity and reducing fuel supply, also had a severe impact on the availability of water in Gaza and the ability of hospitals to provide medical care. The chamber also noted that decisions allowing or increasing humanitarian assistance into Gaza were often conditional. They were not meant to fulfill Israel's obligations under international humanitarian law or to ensure that the civilian population in Gaza would be adequately supplied with goods in need. In fact, they were a response to the pressure of the international community or requests by the United States of America. In any event, the increases in humanitarian assistance were not sufficient to improve the population's access to essential goods. Furthermore, the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that no clear military need or other justification under international humanitarian law could be identified for the restrictions placed on access for humanitarian relief operations. Despite warnings and appeals made by, inter alia, the UN Security Council, UN Secretary General, states, and governmental and civil society organizations about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, only minimal humanitarian assistance was authorized. In this regard, the chamber considered the prolonged period of deprivation and Mr. Netanyahu's statement connecting the halt in the essential goods and humanitarian aid with the goals of war. The chamber therefore found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant bear criminal responsibility for the war crime of starvation as a method of warfare. The chamber found that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the lack of food, water, electricity and fuel, and specific medical supplies, created conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of part of the civilian population in Gaza, which resulted in the death of civilians, including children due to malnutrition and dehydration. On the basis of material presented by the prosecution covering the period until the 20th of May 2024, the chamber could not determine that all elements of the crime against humanity of extermination were met. However, the chamber did find that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the crime against humanity of murder was committed in relation to these victims. In addition, by intentionally limiting or preventing medical supplies and medicine from getting into Gaza, in particular anesthetics and anesthesia machines, the two individuals are also responsible for inflicting great suffering by means of inhumane acts on persons in need of treatment. Doctors were forced to operate on wounded persons and carry out amputations, including on children, without anesthetics, and/or were forced to use inadequate and unsafe means to sedate patients, causing these persons extreme pain and suffering. This amounts to the crime against humanity of other inhumane acts. The chamber also found reasonable grounds to believe that the above-mentioned conduct deprived a significant portion of the civilian population in Gaza of their fundamental rights, including the rights to life and health, and that the population was targeted based on political and/or national grounds. It therefore found that the crime against humanity of persecution was committed. Finally, the chamber assessed that there are reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant bear criminal responsibility as civilian superiors for the war crime of intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population of Gaza. In this regard, the chamber found that the material provided by the prosecution only allowed it to make findings on two incidents that qualified as attacks that were intentionally directed against civilians. Reasonable grounds to believe exist that Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant, despite having measures available to them to prevent or repress the commission of crimes or ensure the submittal of the matter to the competent authorities, failed to do so. Background: on the 1st of January 2015, the State of Palestine lodged a declaration under Article 12(3) of the Rome Statute accepting jurisdiction of the court since the 13th of June 2014. On the 2nd of January 2015, the State of Palestine acceded to the Rome Statute by depositing its instrument of accession with the UN Secretary-General. The Rome Statute entered into force for the State of Palestine on the 1st of April 2015. On the 22nd of May 2018, pursuant to Articles 13(a) and 14 of the Rome Statute, the State of Palestine referred to the prosecutor the situation since the 13th of June 2014, with no end date. On the 3rd of March 2021, the prosecutor announced the opening of the investigation into the situation in the State of Palestine. This followed pre-trial chamber's decision on the 5th of February 2021 that the court could exercise its criminal jurisdiction in the situation and, by majority, that the territorial scope of this jurisdiction extends to Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. On the 17th of November 2023, the Office of the Prosecutor received a further referral of the situation in the State of Palestine from South Africa, Bangladesh, Bolivia, Comoros, and Djibouti, and on the 18th of January 2024, the Republic of Chile and the United Mexican States.
Olusegun Obasanjo, bringing you the news in a more digital way.